Good morning from New Zealand. This is the 8th of January, 2018. And I'm on a roll, I tell you. Why do I feel so compulsed to do these live streams on Facebook about the myths around childbirth? And part of it's in the description is because these myths have it's like something changed in the 1970s and suddenly there are all these do's and don'ts. I mean, I can go back in my mind and tell you which ones came first and what the impact was. For instance, one of them had to do with spina bifida and cleft palates and taking of folic acid. I mean, that was really, really important to people. Unfortunately, it was take folic acid from the time you know you're pregnant. And that's really, you need to take folic acid before you get pregnant because it needs to be in your system because the cellular development's occurring once you're pregnant. But even taking it during early pregnancy, and remember when I first got pregnant, it took at least 6 to 8 weeks for us to know that we were pregnant. We had a rabbit test. Rabbits were injected with our urine, and then you could see whether they had produced the pregnancy hormone. Now you just piss on a strip. So these myths have just blown up, and it makes it harder and harder for anyone to achieve a really positive birth. Or let's put it this way, only a very, very small number of women are achieving what is now considered to be that ideal birth. So this myth that women need to feel safe. The other reason I probably am, and agitated might be a good word for me, is that I spent a lot of time in third world countries where there was no access to medical care. So I actually know what we as human beings, when we don't live in a modern society, experience. And one of the things that is profound for any of you who have traveled into third world countries, and particularly if you've really gone out and been bush, is that modern people really believe that nothing bad will happen to them. And if something bad happens, somebody's to blame. And that's prevalent everywhere. You know, that shouldn't have happened. And that's what's called the, politically correct, or, this hypervigilance. Children can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do that because if something happens. So modern people have limited their capacity to be resilient because everything's done for us. And we have an expectation that everything that is done for us is done right and that there is nothing that can happen that we have to meet in a challenging manner. So let's talk about the myth about whether you have to feel safe in childbirth. First of all, that's never existed. That's a myth that was developed in the late 1980s. We never talked about it. Did women feel safe when they birthed? Geez, I don't know. I mean, birth is not something you can control when it happens unless you're having a non-laboring cesarean. So your birth occurs whenever it occurs, which means if you have to feel safe, then you have to be able to absolutely control everything in your personal and external environment. That's not possible. So let's talk about what people started to say was safe. First of all, they started to say hospitals aren't safe because hospitals are where people go when they're sick, and birth isn't an illness. So women shouldn't birth in the hospital. So you should have your home birth because home birth is obviously the safest place where you feel safest. But that's not true for a lot of women. Women don't feel safe in their home. Women accept their home environment as what it is. If we consider homes to be safe, then we also have to believe that families don't yell at each other, there's no abuse, there's no alcoholism or drug addiction or anything like that. And that's unrealistic. Those things happen. How about poverty? So we are talking really about an elite group of people. They still have abuse in their family, alcoholism, addiction. They yell at each other. But the concept is really from an elite viewpoint, which is that, and I don't mean white elite, I mean class elite or intellectually elite, that somehow people can create this environment that is so special and so perfect that they will then be able to achieve this ideal, orgasmic, wonderful birth. And we see wonderful births. We posted a picture of a young woman giving birth to twins in a pool with her husband catching the babies. She's absolutely blissed out. And bless these women who have these births. But Common Knowledge Trust, our trust, and Birthing Better represent everybody. Did every Birthing Better family or mother feel safe when she gave birth? A lot of women don't feel safe in their own minds. So we just have to stop putting that on women. But what it's come out to be is that one is that fathers should not help you. They should be protecting your sacred space. And is birth a sacred space? Not necessarily. It's a dynamic space. And should that be protected? Well, the message was that cats go into a closet or animals go where it's dark. But unless you've lived under a rock, I had a cat who gave birth in the rug in front of the living room, in front of the sofa. Animals, birth is something that spontaneously happens. If you can prepare your nest and you can be in that nest, great, that's wonderful. But even people in the 45 years I've been involved with birth, with people who are trying to create that nest, trying to create that wonderful environment, things happen. Snowstorms happen, floods happen, the electricity goes out, the hot water goes out. I mean, really, we have to understand that birth is very dynamic and it occurs. We've also been told by these same people who say birth has to be safe is, oh, you don't have sex with people watching you. Women shouldn't have birth when people watching you. But sex is a planned thing. Birth is a spontaneous thing. This is the cartoons that go through my head. If we spontaneously were Randy and just had to bonk right now, we'd be doing it in the streets. We wouldn't bloody care whether anybody was watching us or not. And the fact is, when you're giving birth, when you're in the throes of labor, as women will tell you, it doesn't matter who's there. You're not focused on them. You're not focused on whether you like to pee or poo in public. You are just involved in the dynamics of the birth. So we have to throw out this belief that we have to be safe in order to give birth. The other message is that, well, we have these oxytocin rushes, and oxytocin's what makes us feel better. I'll tell you, this is another cartoon that goes through my head. We don't have like this meter that goes up, that goes, oxytocin is now active. And when women are in intense pain, I'll tell you, if you say to them, how's your oxytocin doing? They just growl at you. So maybe oxytocin is there or not, the love hormone. But I'll tell you, when women are having intense labor pains, love is not the issue. In fact, I worked with a young couple. They were very sexually involved with each other. In fact, they had such intense, and they were very yogic. So they had this very tantric sexuality. And when she was about 8.5 months pregnant, she came in to meet with me, and her uterus was just tight as a drum, and the baby that had been very settled in her pelvis was pulled out and just out of the pelvis and just locked into this tight uterus. And I said, what happened? She said she had this very intense orgasm. And this does not mean you shouldn't have orgasms. Go ahead and have orgasms. And this has only happened once in 45 years. But something had happened, perhaps because she was so close to giving birth, and she wasn't carrying very big. So it wasn't that her belly got in the way of having a lot of intimacy. But it took us quite a while to get her belly to relax and let this baby come down again. But what happened was she had this really, really quick labor, and her husband was just absolutely in love with this woman and so delighted to have a baby. And the baby was crowning on the perineum, and she was very focused, very internalized. And he said to her, "I love you so much." And she just glared at him and said, "Love is not the issue right now." And I thought it was a perfect response, because love is not the issue. If oxytocin hormone is a love hormone, I'll tell you, that's not the issue right now when we're in the throes of labor. So we have to throw out that concept that oxytocin is something we should hook onto, because most of us don't know how to hook onto that. And we're just focused on staying in control. So when we're thinking about birth being safe, the other thing that people say is that those people around us have to respect us. This has been a real big issue for me, because I have attended hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of births and seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of midwives and doulas and obstetricians and obstetrical nurses, GPs, and everybody, lay midwives, practice. I have never seen anybody intentionally harm a woman, or actually even be really rude to a woman. Short sometimes and quite directive, but they're not out there to bully you. And women are very sensitive, which is true. So I have seen people, and particularly partners, be absolutely gracious with that woman, and that woman think that they're not being gracious. Honestly, I've seen people try their best to accommodate women's choices, birth plans, needs, wants, and the woman just be a bitch, really, honestly. So when we say that people have to respect us, well, it goes both ways. And this is where what we learned in Birthing Better was so profound. When we were skilled and we were using skills, and why were we primarily using skills? To stay in control, to stay on top of the internal sensations we were having and the external factors that were impacting on us, whether it's that snowstorm and the midwife isn't going to get to the home birth, whether it's a bunch of students in the hospital room that we're not particularly liking there, whether we're being given a rough vaginal exam, whether we were promised that we could get up and move around, and yet we're being told we need to have an internal fetal monitor because they're trying to pick up maybe an abnormality in the baby's heart tones. We have a lot of external circumstances. When we are skilled, we focus on staying in control. It's as simple as that. We do it with every inhale, every exhale, and we use our mind to yoke to our body to make certain that we are as open as possible, creating as much space for our baby, and staying focused. And that is observable and hearable by people who are with us. They see our focus. They hear our focus, which means if we need to negotiate things that come up, we are more likely to help in that negotiation. Because believe it or not, skilled women are quite articulate. They can take a moment to think, and they can take a moment to say to people around them, just wait till this contraction is over, and then in the space between, think about it, and then be able to say, I'm having another one, just wait. What birth professionals find is that when they work with skilled women, they are less frightened. If all the indicators are fine, the highest risks can be negotiated because the indicators are fine. And if the indicators start to go off, then the women and the partner or whoever else will negotiate because they are behaving in a controlled and focused manner. So right now, so let me go back a minute. In the 1970s, when I gave birth, so it was from the 60s to the 80s, Lamaze and Bradley. New Zealand, it was the 50s to the 70s. But that was only for a select group of people. But Lamaze was everywhere in the United States. So as I said in the description, millions upon millions upon millions of women went in using Lamaze and Bradley method. So the obstetricians, the staff, saw this huge change from women being left alone, not having skills, to skilled women coming in with husbands who really helped them and coached. That was a bit of a golden time in childbirth because all the changes, all the positive changes occurred because you could see these women in control, and that influenced the profession. The profession could see, wanted to help women stay in control. So instead of seeing women out of control or curled up in a ball or screaming or just being so silent, they saw skilled women. Now you don't see skilled women. When I ask midwives, how many women do you see? Let's pick out of 10, maybe 1, or out of 20, really. How many dads are skilled? Yeah, maybe 1. But when we bring skilled families into birth, into the same birth professional, they can see 8 out of 10 skilled women, 8 out of 10 skilled dads. And those 2 that aren't skilled are people who just said, nah, I don't need to learn skills, or I didn't. But even them, if you have people that are really unskilled, instead of saying to them, you're behaving out of control, if you then say to them, look, use a better breathing, breathe in your nose, out your mouth, but relax at every exhale. If that's the only thing you know as a birth professional, then you can say to them, this is a skill you need to use. But if we pre-skill our society, then women will birth with dignity, with pride, with empowerment. Even if they don't feel internally safe in themselves, there are women who have had terrible things happen to themselves. They don't feel safe in themselves. They just get on with life. So this myth that women have to feel safe at childbirth is just, I don't know what to say about it. Any comments, please put them on our Facebook page. Start to engage in Birthing Better. Share this video. Make comments. We have to be able to change birth for all of us, not just for the very few. Our children, our future generations, deserve a skilled society. Simple as that. We need skilled mothers and fathers because this has a profound positive impact on how people parent. And that's important. So see you tomorrow with another Debunking the Myths Around Childbirth. See you later. Bye-bye.